Hey everyone, and welcome to my first ever Syntropic Spotlight. I'm really excited to share this with you guys because it's something I've been working on for a while. And not just because it's my first one, it's also because it's with a friend and a mentor of mine, Alastair, who has turned a neglected space into a thriving food forest, and it is just the most magical place to visit. Secondly, before we get into the video, I do want to ask you, if you have a food forest or you know someone who has a food forest, reach out to me at my email or at Proudfoot.ff on Instagram, because I'd love to do more of this. I had so much fun and I would love to continue going out and seeing people's amazing food forest creations. So without any more waiting, enjoy the video and hope you enjoy it. Cheers. Before we jump into it, I want to do a quick little thing about you because I feel it's important just to get a little bit of a scope. Is this your first attempt by yourself? And I know you have previous experience too.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this forest here, is this your own baby?
Yes. Yeah. This was the first time that I had my own plot of land, and I sort of started with very little knowledge. But I had done a bunch of like community garden forests and tree planting days and like afforestation and reforestation and a bit of bush care and those sorts of projects, but I never planted the first seed.
And you're in the Blue Mountains now?
Yeah, so I'm here like a few days a week and then in the Blue Mountains like for four nights.
You're creating forests and stuff up there?
Yeah, I'm sort of spread thin across the whole East Coast, and I fly and travel all up and down.
So if people are in like Sydney or Blue Mountains reaching out to you wanting to do something like this, they can do that?
I would like to get more and more focused, just to the Blue Mountains. But I think my vision is to bring a laser focus to the Blue Mountains. And it's a bit of a hard nut to crack because it is a temperate climate, which is more difficult than where we are here. And there is a lot of local fixation on certain species, which are often used in syntropic agroforestry.
But and I guess we're going to be seeing some of that down here too.
They have a bit of a bad rap in certain circles. So yeah, there's a little bit of work, both socially and climatically, to make it work. But I would like to be sort of there all the time and sort of focused in that community.
Blue Mountains, if you're there, he's your man. So should we go down? Because I'm pumped. Last time I was here, we were pulling out like daikon radish and I did a few bits and pieces, but I have not, like, just looking at the growth of this, this is epic, dude.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Yeah.
It's freaking pumping. We had a little pre-walk before, so I've seen it, but man, I'm actually blown away with just the size of it. Prior to this creation, what was the space? Like, why this space?
Many years ago when my family bought the property, this was just a hill that was covered in blackberry, and that wall wasn't there. So my family has built this wall, and this area ended up being this really awkward spot, and they decided that they should put some utilities down here like the septic. And in order to hold the land flat to put the septic tank, they built this big retaining wall below it. But this was just really just boulders and backfill. Like, it was a bit of bracken fern and some rocks.
I love the boulders, and I love how you've used them as stepping stones throughout the forest too. It's not like this is separate or we need to get rid of this, it's in the way. It's like, no, this is a part of the context, and we're going to use that for our own advantage. The one question I did want to ask you, which I was holding my tongue because I wanted to ask you before, was I remember when we were first here, people would walk down and would totally miss this. Like, they were busy looking out the other way. Are you getting people who are walking down this track here, are they noticing this now? Are they picking up on this like epic?
No,
still not.
No, and we like the house's septic tank is in the back, and once a year a company comes and they have to sort of check that it's all working and that it's fine. And two guys came the other day and they were pretty upset that they couldn't get to it.
Okay.
So they wanted me to like cut the weeds and like make it less wild. Like they couldn't even see that it was a garden. They just thought it was like a weedy wild space where I had just let it go.
What about when you get people in there?
They come alive. It makes sense, especially when you start showing what each plant is, because most people that come in here don't know what a banana plant looks like, or they've never seen an elderberry on a plant. So there's a lot of just bringing people into the fold. And I think people get a bit scared of snakes and spiders, and I'm cultivating wild in this space.
What I love about this is that it's that wild aspect. We see a lot of like syntropic forests, which are linear lines, which is beautiful in its own right, but this is like as close as we can get to what a forest should be doing. It's just, there is patterns and there is syntropy in this.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't pick up on it the same way you would pick up on a line.
It's on purpose. It's not a ornamental garden. The family property is like an equestrian property.
Sure.
And every purchase of flat land is always used specifically for horses.
Yeah.
And this is a space where it's not flat and we can't put a horse.
Yep.
So it's a really marginal, undervalued area that was kind of just being let go to the wild.
Yep.
Because of that, I think that was one of the reasons that it's ended up like this, because I just didn't have that context to offer anything else, really. There are a lot of challenges to the site, including the wall and the orientation and getting in and out. Like initially was a bit of a problem. There was, I needed to bring wheelbarrows and stuff in, and those sorts of things were definitely more difficult at the start. But now that I have zero inputs, that's less of a problem. Yeah.
Should we go inside?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
You lead, brother. You lead.
Come into my office. Well, this is the original entrance. So there are different little sections that I've added periodically over time, and each of them is quite distinctive from the last and has different plants, but also is really indicative of the amount of knowledge that I had at the time. Because when I did the first one, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't really know anything about syntropic agroforestry. And as we move through time, you can also see that the forest is better layered, the complexity is better, the soil is healthier, the diversity is there, which is just interesting to sort of track my own knowledge and how it's reflected in the forest. Area where the elder is and that guava tree, that kind of area was the first space that I planted out. So that was about 3 years ago. And then I extended down, not all the way, but down there. Built this section here. And then that section at the end is the newest, which we did together. So that's about 13 or 14 months old now. And that's easily the most vibrant when we're inside. It gets pretty wild and woolly.
Coming? Oh man, this is so cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
So, in fact, this is the first plant, this guava tree, a cherry guava. That was the very first plant that I put in this space.
Okay.
And it has just been quietly growing. It was probably about waist high when I planted it. And that was, I would say, is the biggest plant that I've actually put in.
Oh, wow.
There's something that I've really incorporated in my philosophy and approach, which is more of a co-creation, collaboration with the ecology, rather than the very common ethos, which is I want an orange tree and I'm going to put it here, and then the ecology is like, oh, an orange tree, okay, and we have to try and support it. But when you work with seed and cuttings, there is more of a conversation, and you you give the ecology a toolbox and you allow it to make decisions about what it can support. So if it's not ready to, if you put a citrus seed in, if the ecology doesn't have what it takes to look after that citrus plant, that seed won't germinate. So that's a kind of a reflection in a microcosm of what I'm really aiming for, is to cultivate the wild and to allow for more of a conversation rather than the overlord of the wilderness. You will be here, these are my subjects and my minions. It's more of a collaboration. Would you like to be here? Philosophically, that letting go and allowing the wild to arrive into the space and then letting it take its own course has really led to the vitality.
You know, take us for a little wander. Show us some of your favorite plants, whether they're medicinal or biomass or food even.
Well, I think my favorite plant is the willow, so we can show you that. I've been really kind of working with the idea that like a food forest is quite a limiting term. We get very fixated on creating food only, where in the reality is that there are so many incredible non-edible uses of plants that are available. Building materials and weaving, and plants that are useful for dyeing, and plants that are useful for like insect, all kinds of different things. So that has really broadened the scope and the diversity. And so there are a lot of trees in here which I'm just learning over time have a medicinal value. And some of them I planted without knowing what the medicinal value was. Yeah, so like the loquat, which is a very typical fruiting tree in this part of the world. I didn't realize how medicinal the leaves were. So we've been drying out a lot of the leaves. We've been making teas. It has all sorts of great medicinal qualities.
Beautiful, man.
The Brugmansia, which is another one of those
amazing
plants.
flowers.
Gorgeous flowers. I've recently learnt that if you nibble a bit of the leaf, it can help ease a stomach pain. The willow is a big one. I'd love to talk more about that, but there's like a whole list of medicinal properties that offers. The acacias, like the wattle, teas. I really believe in that sensory garden experience. So I don't want it just to be a visually stunning thing, which it definitely is, but I love my sense of smell. So I've got a lot of really potent aromatic plants. I've got a lot of really textural, like sandpaper fig and sandpaper wattle that have a really coarse, interesting leaf. The tastes, like all of the senses I want to engage, and I think that really makes it an intimate experience to come into the forest. If you are engaging with all of the different senses, you feel a lot closer. I planted this maybe 13 months ago.
13 months.
I would say it's probably 5 meters tall. There are a lot of mythological, druidic stories which I have a sympathy towards. But just practically as a plant, as an agroforestry species, as a medicinal herb, I just feel that it offers so much. The bark is really rich in a compound called salicin, which is where aspirin comes from. And usually we harvest a stick, maybe as thick as my finger, and we'll pull the bark off and we'll just steep it in hot water for 20 minutes. And if you have a headache or some muscle cramps or some soreness, it's a full body sensation. Like you'll be really nice and relaxed and happy, and it will take the edge off any pain, similar to aspirin. And then that salicin is also a rooting hormone. So particularly in an agroforestry setting where there's a lot of cuttings going into the ground, I will harvest some bark, I will soak it in water for a week.
Okay.
And then that water will be filled with root hormone compounds.
Wow.
So I'll just dip each cutting into the water before I plant it. And then it is an incredible weaving plant. So whether you're weaving structures like walls and buildings or basketry or hats, it is a really compelling, springy material that's great for weaving.
Seen those willow fences, man.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a no-no plant in some sort of circles. So I'm very careful about how I utilize it and treat it, but it provides biomass, it provides medicine, it provides a material to build with, it provides something to help with the nursing and propagating of other plants. Like, it just has so many different facets. So it's something that is really compelling in my plant journey, and
Awesome, man.
something that I love to incorporate in my forests. Yeah.
So this one's an interesting one, Alastair,
Yes.
because we did talk at the top about certain plants that people have, certain feelings towards, because they get labeled as something in particular. But in syntropic stuff, we tend to welcome a lot of those plants because they have a role to play. This one here is Bana, or elephant grass.
Yes.
Tell me a bit about it in your system right now and your experience working with this plant.
I think I should just preface things by saying that I don't think the best approach to life is to constantly be in the war room and having this sort of militarized, aggressive relationship with plants. Each plant has something to offer, and I am just as mindful as anyone else of the progeny of the plants, and that they do have the capacity to run wild in the ecosystems around. So any plant that I introduce, I enforce a mandate in myself to ensure that it doesn't spread outside of the forest that I am growing and cultivating. So I'm not encouraging people to plant invasive weeds, but we can work together with those plants to create vitality and abundance. So there is a relationship there that is a beneficial one to both the ecologies around us and to the humans that are engaging with and living inside those ecologies. So I think that's really important. Banner grass is a really pivotal plant in the early stages of any agroforestry system, and you can see by the really broad leaves and how much of it there is that it has an amazing capacity to photosynthesize and to add sugars and important nutrients into the soil and to build the soil in the early stages to support trees. That banner seems to have an insatiable desire to create a forest. That's all that it seems to want. And I can show you in one of the other sections. Once the forest starts to develop around it, the banner quickly moves out of the ecology. It self-sacrifices. Once it can see that its goals and aims have been realized, it just moves out so quickly. So here it's really vital. There isn't a lot of other diversity around it. So until I start to manage it and to increase the trees and to bring in that next layer of succession, it's going to continue to remain like this. But I cut this to the ground 3 months ago.
Wow.
So
it's a very giving plant, isn't it?
Only. And if we move into the next section, you can see that it's starting to falter and move out. There's one here and another one there.
You can barely see them compared to the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's really spindly. It's not really shooting back. It's not really offering a lot anymore to the ecology. And a lot of the trees and things that are establishing around it, particularly this other one here, you can really see that its role to the ecology has been fulfilled, and
it's
that
seeing itself out
it's
now.
seeing itself out, which is a really beautiful part of the relationships that you see in the forest. And the role that death plays in building the conditions for the next generation, which is crazy in comparison to so many arguments that I see online about people just destroying banner grass as this evil plant. If you see its intentions and you collaborate together, it will move out on its own accord. Like, I haven't poisoned this, I've just pruned it a few times, and now it's ready to support the next generation of complexity, which is really exciting.
Which is up above our heads now.
It's up above our heads right now, yeah.
I'm just admiring all the colours of your forest too, just like, and I find it really beautiful that you can look at something like a willow that's history isn't really so much that deep here in Australia, but then it's next to something like an acacia, which has been here for a very, very long time, and then incorporated these natives and exotics and invasive species. But you take off all those labels and it's just functioning all together as a forest. There's no prejudice here. It's just an ecosystem thriving, and I love that. I love that so much.
I really want to celebrate that because there are so many native plants that have a lot to offer. I have a lot of native herbs like this native oregano and native mint. This one is quite a eucalyptus-y smelling plant. I've got a native guava there, a sandpaper fig, I've got Davidson plum, lots of wattle like the Cootamundra wattle,
That's
a lot of eucalyptus. I've got a kakadu plum. Just every possible opportunity that I can add more native vitality into the system. And as you said, like, there is no discrimination between the plants themselves. They coalesce together so quickly. They don't have that same distinction. They don't create the same division between native and non-native that we do. They just come together into a community instantly. And that has been a really exciting part of the experience, is to really track that, how quickly they form bonds. Even if they have zero ancestral connection, they come together so quickly, and I think that there is something that we can take away from seeing that too.
From when you started the process, what creatures showed up, and where you are now with what creatures are showing up? Because when we talk about succession of the forest, I feel like some things that are left out are the comings and goings of certain creatures.
And the comings and goings of certain creatures can have a negative or positive impact on your own forest goals. Which is an interesting conversation I had with Klaus from Thermodynamics, because they have a lot of possums that live in their forest, and they eat a lot of the young trees. And initially I had quite a few bandicoots that moved in, and they started digging up a lot of the tree seeds and seedlings. So there's like that constant argument going on inside, which is, do I allow the wild and the animals to come in, or do I need to sort of insert myself at certain times to ensure that the forest continues to grow and flourish, because some of those animals aren't forest species, they're grassland species, so maybe they have a different goal to mine, but then whose goal is more important? I have a resident blue tongue now.
Awesome.
I have some native quail that have moved in. I've been seeing whipbirds in here a lot recently.
Which is a great representation. You can, from having those animals, you know that you must have a really strong canopy.
A lot of butcher birds, a lot of bandicoots, which they're not really doing anything anymore. There's definitely something that's like burrowing and tunneling. And I used to get really worried about that, but I've started to see that water gets trapped in there and seeds tend to germinate better in those little areas of disturbance that have been made. So I just I leave it to its own devices, and there are so many butterflies and spiders and interesting little critters and beetles and things. A lot of assassin beetles and like positive predatorial insects have moved in. Any kind of pest control.
Beautiful.
I don't have any kind of fertilizer. I just sort of let the biological processes look after themselves, and I've really realized that the ecology is much more capable of those sorts of processes than I ever was. So I just sort of allow things to happen in that way.
What is it about syntropy, or what is it about rewilding? What is it about this form of gardening that has captivated you?
Well, I feel like it's the most potent form of biomimicry that I've seen in really any kind of growing. So in terms of facilitating and mobilizing ecological processes towards abundance, I've seen a lot of different modalities of gardening, but I haven't seen anything that sort of quite speaks to this volume of vibrance and fecundity. Like, I just don't see that in other forms of gardening. And as we spoke about before, there's a certain vulnerability in relinquishing the human as the king, as the overlord of the system. It's becoming an animal, learning the humbling of like learning my own ecological niche and how I can play a role, not just for my own benefit, but for the benefit of everything involved. I didn't come to food forestry or to growing plants from a need to feed myself or a yearning to grow resources. I just had some really positive experiences with forest at a time where I was really struggling. I had a really horrible breakup a number of years ago, and I kind of hit a rock bottom moment in my life, and in that time I became really close to a forest that was near my house. And through that process I gained so much medicinally, psychologically. My appreciation of beauty and the simple things was really magnified the more that I spent time in the forest. And through different life courses, I moved away from that forest, and I found that I was lacking something without that relationship, that day-to-day interaction with the forest.
Okay.
So it's a really roundabout way of saying that I eventually discovered food forests, but I came at it from a point of it's sort of medicinal to the soul, the spiritual fulfillment. This is probably wading into the weeds a little bit, but it has become an altar to life. I feel like I've really gained an appreciation for the power of community through witnessing relationships that occur in the forest and the fearlessness in which plants will compromise. And I don't want to put words into the metaphorical mouths of plants, but I see so much givingness and a willingness to come together to create something better than the sum of its. But I also see how so many of the existential crises that we face, so many of our issues with identity, so many of the problems that we're dealing with as a collective and individually seem to come as a result from a disconnection from this. And I've seen so many people enter this space, and all of those worries and angsts have dissipated. So I wonder a lot about how these spaces can be used to facilitate a healthier human body and heart and mind. Like, I feel like there's something really powerful there.
I want Alastair to be able to share where people can find you if they want to reach out or see the work you do. If that's something you're interested in doing.
Yeah, great.
Through maybe your social media or through an email or your business.
Yeah, so I run a business called Entangled, and it's essentially helping people establish systems, forests like this, whether it's a wilder one like this or more of an organized farming, small holding, acreage sort of style. I'm open to any kind of project.
And where can they find you? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Probably on Instagram. That's entangled edible ecosystems.
Yeah, down in the
Yeah, I want to empower people to be able to sort of choose their own adventure and to give them the tools to manage a forest like this. And ultimately my goal is to no longer be a consultant and more
Be
of
like
a
the
friend.
Barnagrass and see yourself out eventually.
That's right, yeah. Yeah,
Legend.
Thank you, man.
Cool. Happy days?
Happy days.
Happy days.